Hello, everybody. I'm so excited to be able to say that I'm having a conversation with our Life After Cancer coach, Charmian. Wonderful to have you with us. So, today we want to dig a little bit into your background.
Sure.
Every coach has a bit of a kind of origin story, something that led them to the point where they want to help others with the thing that they are work with the subject that they like to coach. And so today I want to dig into your backstory, find out a little bit more about you, and then talk a little bit about why you work with us. So
Yes.
thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Jamie. Very
My
happy to be
pleasure.
here.
Should we dig in then? Should we dig into
Yes.
your backstory a little bit, please?
Yes, of course. So, my story with cancer started in 2020 when I was working for a large government organisation. It was right in the middle of COVID, and I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I was working part time at the time because I was supporting my brother through a cancer diagnosis. So I went from being cancer carer at the Marsden in London to a cancer patient myself. And straight away, from the minute I got my diagnosis, the support was there. The breast care nurses were fantastic. The information that charities had provided to the nurses to be able to give to patients like me at the point of diagnosis was fantastic. So I felt very well supported from the get-go, and immediately had access to breast care nurses on the phone, and you're just swept up into a system of care and support. And I felt really held, really supported, and anytime I had any worries or concerns, I could pick up the phone and I could speak to somebody who would understand. So from point of diagnosis, I went straight to have surgery about 4 weeks later, and the surgery was all fine and went well. It was only a day case, came home. And at the time, my consultant had predicted that I would only need to have radiotherapy because of the size and the nature of my cancer. But through wonderful technological and medical advances, they genetically profiled my tumour and found out that I would benefit from 4 rounds of chemotherapy. So I went in to have chemotherapy about the October, so a couple of months after I'd had my surgery. And again, I was supported with wonderful staff. Because it was in COVID, I didn't have the support of my family with me during chemotherapy. So the support staff there, the nurses who you get to see on a regular basis, really became such an important part of my cancer journey. They were the familiar faces. They were the ones that I could talk to about how I was feeling, what I was experiencing. They'd heard it before. And it was just comforting to have that familiarity. Um, and partway through my chemotherapy, I decided to stop after 2 sessions. And again, the support I received through that was absolutely fantastic. It was a very challenging time, as you can imagine, when you're going against the advice of an oncologist to stick with 4 rounds. But I had that Macmillan, I had the nurses that had been there with me all the way through at that point. And I stopped my chemotherapy. I went into radiotherapy not long after that. And then it was sort of moving into what they call a sort of a maintenance. So I was having regular transfusions every 6 months to help with my bone density because of my age when I went through my cancer. And it was at that time, after my final infusion, that I was driving home with my husband and I said, "That's it. I've got no more appointments in my diary. Nothing. It's all finished." And it felt like a wave that, just as a wave rolls into the shore and comes with all that crash and boom and everything, that was the support that I was receiving when my treatment finished. That wave withdrew, went back to where it came from, and there I was, just standing there, kind of felt lonely, and I didn't know what was going on. I was left there on the shore, sort of abandoned. So basically, all the support structure had gone. The final appointment was the end of that support, as I had known it for, the best part of 12 months by then. And my husband, my family said to me, "Was that not something to celebrate? You've come to the end of your treatment, now you can start living life." But for me, it was a real transitional moment of, what happens now? Who's there for me now? How do I do this thing called life when what I've experienced was a trauma? Cancer tried to take my life, and I've now got another shot of life, but I don't know how to do that now. It all looks different. I felt like I was looking at life through a different lens. And there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of guilt associated with that particular time, that transition time. And since I've been doing the work that I'm doing, I volunteer at a large cancer centre in the south of England. And I hear this a lot from people who have been through treatment and are coming out the other side, that there is guilt associated with that survivorship. Survivorship guilt is a real thing, but also being worried about, how do they re-engage with life? What does life look like? And there isn't that celebration. There isn't that big boom of, yay, it's all over. Now I can go back to doing what I was doing, because very often people don't feel like that. And certainly in my case, I felt like it was brought it into sharp focus that, wow, something has tried to take my life. I've got another shot at life, and I want to make that really good. I want to really make the most of that. And so my line managers at work were fantastic throughout. The organisation itself, not so much. That's another subject. We didn't have a cancer specific policy, and so any time off that I had, recovery from surgery or, just the side effects of treatment, is lumped in with a regular sickness policy. So there wasn't a cancer. So I was sort of being treated in the same way as somebody who'd be off with a tummy bug or flu. Cancer side effects are very different and can take a lot longer. So organisation wasn't great, but my line managers were great. And when I did go back to work and full time, and I increased my hours full time once my brother was okay and once I sort of recovered, and I just felt really lost. I came back to the job that I had loved and that I'd always wanted to do and that I knew I was really good at, but I was looking at it through a different lens. Suddenly it didn't feel the same. I couldn't connect with it in the same way. I just didn't feel that same passion that I felt about my job. And my boss offered me coaching, and I thought, oh gosh, it's because I'm doing my job wrong. But she recognized that going through something like cancer can make you look at life in a different way. And for sure, I felt scrambled. I didn't really understand who I was, what I valued, what my priorities were. And because of that, I lacked confidence. I had terrible imposter syndrome. But the one thing nobody tells you when you're going through cancer is that the physical recovery and the emotional and the psychological recovery are two very different things. And I hear this a lot with patients that I work with in the hospital. I'm working with a lady at the moment who, she's in her 40s. Her surgeon said, well, after 4 weeks, you should be fine. You'll have healed. You can go back to work. So in good faith, she did. And she's now finding that everything is catching up with her psychologically, and that she's really doesn't feel robust enough to be back at work because she hasn't dealt with the psychological aspects of what a cancer diagnosis has meant for her. So I realized that there was a really big gap there. Once that support of the medical team has finished and they've withdrawn, and you are left to get on with this big thing called life, who is there to support you? And through my experience, I want to provide that support to other people, because it's a difficult time. It can be a really difficult time, and it can come as a challenge at any point. So I went through a stage of thinking, yeah, chemotherapy in the morning, I'm back at work in the afternoon. I've got this. And it was a year later that I had a complete breakdown and burnout, just because I'd been trying to hold everything together and I hadn't processed that psychological recovery that needed to come. And so that's when coaching really helped me unscramble my thoughts, get all the cards on the table, look at my life, with a helicopter view, and think, right, this is how I move forward in a in a straight line rather than
Brilliant.
sort of zigzagging all over the place.
That's
So
so
that's
amazing. I loved it. I could sit here and just listen to it forever. What
thank
an
you.
incredible journey, and what a great way to turn some real pain into something that can help. There's an amazing saying which I use quite a lot in my business, which is you can either work on your business or in your business. And actually, I
Yes.
think this can work in life as well.
Yes.
Often we're so caught up in what we're doing that we forget about just kind of, as you said, taking a step back and looking at the broader picture. And I guess what cancer forces you to
Yeah.
do is that, and it can be terrifying. I
Yes.
think when you are there, not having any intervention from someone else, especially someone trained to know
Yes.
exactly what you're going through in that situation, is really horrible and scary. And just trying to keep everything together like you were before eventually will just cause some form of mental distress somehow, right?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. And that was exactly what happened for me. And so coaching was really powerful for me. And I've always been in this sort of caring profession. So I'd studied many different things over the years. I even studied for my master's in osteopathy, which I didn't complete. It didn't feel quite right for me. But when I saw how powerful coaching was for me in helping me to move forward with my life post cancer, and unscramble all those things and get that clarity on how I move forward, I thought, this is what I need to do. This is what I need to offer people. There isn't that support there for people coming back into work, and needing to find a way forward and see what life looks like for them on the other side. So alongside my work, I trained to be a coach. I did an accredited diploma in transformative coaching, and then went on to become a certified coach through the International Coaching Federation. And I've done lots of other sort of training. So I've done understanding cancer support, an NCFE qualification. Just so that I kind of have a broader perspective, as well as the coaching expertise and the support in that respect, understanding all the nuances that go with cancer support. And obviously my work in the hospital and volunteering, which I've been doing for about 18 months now. I work with a whole range of cancer patients, not just breast
Amazing.
cancer patients, not just women, men, women, their families, their spouses. And so I've got a very broad exposure to how cancer has impacts people's lives, and in very different ways. But there's also a lot of commonality from what people share with me. Largely, things around how, I went to the doctor for a checkup. 2 weeks later, I'm having a scan. 4 weeks later, I'm in surgery and I've got
Yeah.
cancer, and I never
How
felt
jarring.
ill. Yes. And very often that's where the trauma comes in, that they're given this diagnosis of cancer, of something that's trying to take their life, but they never felt ill in the first place. They felt well. So how's that happened? How are they in this situation, having surgery, coping with whether this terrifying diagnosis, but 6 weeks ago they were in work, they felt perfectly fine, they were making summer holiday plans.
Yeah.
So that's where the trauma comes in, and that's often what people need, that support to work through once all the treatment is finished and supposedly the dust settles. It's, how do I even get into this situation in the first place? What have I done that has caused me to have cancer? What have I done wrong? What can I do differently?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every single person I know has been touched by cancer in some way, even if they haven't
Yes.
experienced it themselves. My
Yes.
father unfortunately passed away from cancer. My best
I'm
friend
sorry.
had brain cancer. There's
Oh gosh.
plenty of examples in my life,
Yes. Yes.
but I think that that's why what you offer is so important, because it's so prevalent,
Yes.
right?
It is.
This is not something that people might experience. It's
Yeah.
something that people very likely will in some way.
Yes.
And
Yes.
as I said, if they don't experience it themselves, a loved one will.
That's
And
right.
I think that a lot of us aren't necessarily qualified to be able to coach them back into a position mentally that they were before. So I'm so glad
Yes.
that you've created this thing for yourself, and that you're helping so many people. I think it's amazing. One of the questions I had when you were telling
Mm.
us telling us a little bit about your voluntary work there was, you said there were a lot of commonalities that you're noticing.
Yes.
Would you say that everyone is experiencing something different? Is that something you would agree with? Um, I've seen people go through this before, and they've reacted very, very differently to it.
Yes.
Is that something that you've noticed?
Yes. So I think it's very different. So there are commonalities among cancer groups, among tumor groups. So breast cancer patients traditionally, and the research shows they handle things in a certain way, and there is a lot more support. If you're talking about head and neck cancers, that is very different. Bowel cancers are very different. They all are slightly different in how those group of people, how they react and how they move forward from their cancer. But there are a lot of commonalities, particularly with breast cancer and breast. And I'm specifically saying this breast cancer in women because, of course, men can get breast cancer too. Obviously, not as common, but it can be a thing. Very often, they are women who are in the workplace, who have got careers, have got jobs, and maybe even have families. And so, a lot of what they experience there is a commonality there. There is a commonality about how they communicate with the children, how they manage with their teams at work, because as you rightly said, Jamie, in the way life is now, we all know the statistics. If 1 in 2 of us are going to get cancer, that means that 1 in 2 of us are also going to have cancer touch our lives in some way, whether as a friend, a carer, a partner, a colleague. It's going to happen for all of us. And at the moment, we're not very good at having those conversations in the workplace, particularly. A lot of people who've been through cancer come back to work. People don't know what to say to them because they don't want to say the
Yeah.
wrong thing, and so end up saying nothing at all. And that then becomes very isolating for that person impacted. But then within the workplace, you can also get people who perhaps overshare because they don't have that outlet. They don't have that support, that person to talk to about what they're going through. So they share everything with the team. And the team are thinking, yeah, there's too much information. I don't need to hear that. So there is a lot of commonality, but there is also one thing I remember thinking when I was going through my cancer diagnosis. Whenever I asked a question, I thought, if I have £1 for every time I hear this answer, I maybe never need to work again. So you hear all the time the medical team saying everybody is different, and that is so true, that everybody will experience their cancer differently. So that's why individual support is so important, to meet somebody where they are now and
Yes.
help them to move forward. And there isn't a one size fits all. Um, and whilst there are lots of courses you can go on for life after cancer, I did them myself. That wasn't for me. I didn't want to spend time talking to people about how I felt after chemo and how it made me feel. And I wanted to move forward with my life. I wanted to, like, this has happened. This has been a thing. It's thrown everything up in the air for me. But now the dust has settled. Now I've got all the cards on the table. I want to forge a path forwards and move on from this. I don't want to spend time going over everything I've been through and the trauma of it. So everybody will experience it differently and what they want to get out of the next step. And it might be counselling, dealing with their trauma, dealing with the cancer itself, or it might be, right, this has happened. How do I move forward? And that's where
I'm really
coaching is great.
glad that's your answer, because ultimately, this is why we built ReechUs in the first place. It was
Mm,
because everyone is experiencing something so radically different that
yeah,
self-help resources just don't go far enough,
no,
which is normally what people are given in this
yes,
situation. I think the statistic is something along the lines of 60% of people that contact an EAP end up being directed towards a self-help resource.
Yes.
And ultimately, because everyone is experiencing something different, they need intervention that matches what they're going through, or at
They,
least allows
they
them to explore what they are going through.
that's
And that
right.
must be human, and it must be
Yes.
from someone who has experience of what they are talking about, which
Yes.
is why I wanted to bring you into the ReechUs team, the ReechUs family, and make
Thank
sure
you.
the employees that we work with have access to someone like yourself. Is there anything you'd like to say about joining us, and anything that you've noticed maybe about us? Maybe any differences between us and a traditional approach of the kind of EAP approach?
Yes. So I had followed you for a little while on LinkedIn, Jamie, and I was just so inspired by what ReechUs is offering, because from my experience, I worked with a large government organization, and when I contacted our EAP, which is one of the bigger EAPs, to seek support, all they were able to offer me was counselling, and I didn't want counselling. I'd had that through the hospital. That side was taken care of, but I wanted cancer specific support, and they weren't able to offer that to me. It was counselling, and that was it. And the importance of having tailored support, you just can't, you can't put a price on that. And so because I wasn't offered that support through our EAP, I paid privately myself to get the support that I needed. And that took longer. It meant I was off work for longer because I couldn't access that support that I needed at that point in time, simply because our EAP was not set up to provide that. And so when I saw what you were offering via LinkedIn, and via all the promotion that you do to help people understand that there is a better solution out there, that you can have a service provider like ReechUs that gives you that tailored support rather than a generic support. And I liken most EAPs to being like a GP. They're very general in the support that they can provide, but you wouldn't expect your GP to treat you for breast cancer. You would go and see a breast cancer specialist. You wouldn't go and see a foot consultant for breast cancer. There are areas that need specialist support, and that's what you provide through all the services that you offer in ReechUs and through all the experts you've onboarded to support all the employees you work with.
I
So
mean,
I
it's an
wanted to
absolute,
be part of your team.
well, it's an honor to have you as part of the team, and
Well,
I'm so excited that we get to offer this kind of support because it's completely unique. There's no other
it
organization
is.
like us that
Yep.
offers this,
Agreed.
and so it's fantastic, and I really can't wait to see how much of an effect you have. Thank you so much for being part of
Thank
the team.
you,
Thank you so
Jamie.
much for agreeing to have this conversation with me, so
Oh,
people can
pleasure.
see and hear the passion
Oh,
that
so
you
much.
have for this
Yeah.
particular area. It's something very close to my heart, and I'm
Thank you.
incredibly proud that we have you as part of our organization. So thank
Well,
you.
I'm proud to be a part of it. Thank you, Jamie, for having me.